Hey, what's up? So I have a new story that hasn't really been covered too well or covered at all, but I think it's very interesting, and I would like to bring as much of the story out. A former DEA agent by the name of Paul Campo and a former CIA agent by the name of Robert Sensi were both arrested for conspiring to for narcoterrorism, money laundering, drug dealing for the CJNG cartel, a big Mexican cartel. For those of you who've studied the CIA, you know that the CIA often involve themselves in drug dealing, whether they be former or current or still doing it. But this story is actually a little different than your normal CIA narco trafficking story. So let's look at some of the articles about these two guys, find out some more about them, and see what's going on with the DEA and the CIA selling drugs and working with cartels. Okay? So right here, we have the DOJ statement. Former senior DEA official indicted for conspiring to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization, that being a drug cartel, the terrorist organizations now. Paul Campo, former DEA official, and friend Robert Sensi. Notice they don't say who Robert Sensi is. They're leaving out the fact that he was a former CIA agent. Agreed to launder approximately 12 million and participate in narcotics trafficking for the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, aka Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generacion, or CJNG. United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, and Administrator of the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, Terrence C. Cole, announced today the unsealing of an indictment charging Paul Campo and Robert Sensi with terrorism, narcotics distribution, and money laundering charges. Campo and Sensi were arrested yesterday afternoon in New York. The case has been assigned to U.S. District Judge Paul G. Gardefee. As alleged, Paul Campo and Robert Sensi conspired to assist CJNG, one of the most notorious Mexican cartels that is responsible for countless deaths through violence and drug trafficking in the United States and Mexico, said U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. As part of that support, the defendants laundered hundreds of thousands of dollars they believed to be CJNG drug proceeds. They believed it. We'll get into that later. Agreed to launder millions more, and even used their financial expertise to facilitate cocaine trafficking right here in New York City. By participating in the scheme, Campo betrayed the mission he was entrusted with pursuing for his 25-year career with the DEA. CJNG is a violent and corrupting criminal enterprise that New Yorkers want broken. I commend the extraordinary efforts of the DEA in aggressively pursuing CJNG and those who support their deadly and corrupt efforts, no matter who they be. The indictment of Special Agent Paul Campbell sends a powerful message. Those who betray the public trust, past or present, will be held to account to the fullest extent of the law, said DEA Administrator Terrence E. Cole. The alleged conduct occurred after he left the DEA and was unrelated to his official duties here. Where did he learn it? Where did he learn all this money laundering? No. But any former agent who chooses to engage in criminal activity dishonors the men and women who serve with integrity and undermines the public's confidence in law enforcement. We will not look the other way simply because someone once wore this badge. There is no tolerance and no excuse for this kind of betrayal. According to the allegations contained in this indictment, CJNG is a very violent group, blah, 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 overseen by Nemesio Ruben El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes. They deal in narcotics, they sell cocaine, they sell meth, they sell fentanyl and other controlled substances. They also money launder and do other criminal activities, including violence and intimidation. In February, the United States Secretary of State designated the CJNG a foreign terrorist organization. So Paul Campo worked for the DEA for approximately 25 years, a long career. First as a special agent in New York and eventually rising to become a high-level DEA official, specifically the deputy chief of the Office of Financial Operations. Campo retired from DEA in or about January 2016, so about 10 years ago. In late 2024, Robert Sensi is the original target, began meeting with a confidential source. So they're setting these guys up. These guys, it's not like they caught them in the act of selling drugs. They sent that confidential informant to entrap them into money laundering, terrorism, narcotics dealings. And this is something that the FBI does all the time with Muslims. They'll reach out to a Muslim and they'll have someone pretend to be part of Al Qaeda, and then they'll try and get them to commit an act of terrorism, and then there'll be a big headline: "Oh, they were working with Al Qaeda," when they were never working with Al Qaeda. They were working with someone they believe was Al Qaeda, was actually the FBI. So this is the same thing. They're not working with the CJNG. They're working with a confidential source who they believe is a cartel boss or whatever. Sensi told CS1 that he had a friend who used to be in charge of the DEA's financial operations who could assist CJNG in laundering narcotics proceeds and providing CS1 with sensitive DEA information about sources and investigations. So I wonder who the confidential source is. Probably a former drug dealer who's trying to work off some time, and now he is entrapping former CIA guys, which is weird because the DEA normally does not go after anyone connected to the CIA, past or present. After these initial meetings, Campo and Sensi met together with CS1 on several occasions. During these conversations, Campo and Sensi agreed to launder money for CS1 by, among other things, converting cash into cryptocurrency and making investments in real estate. Campo and Sensi further advised CS1 about fentanyl production and explored procuring commercial drones and military-grade weapons and equipment for CJNG, including AR-15s, semi-automatic rifles, M4 carbines, M16 rifles, grenade launchers, and rocket-propelled grenades. As part of these discussions, Campo and Sensi often boasted about and relied heavily on Campo's prior federal law enforcement experience and expertise regarding financial investigations and drug cartels. So these guys are dirty. CIA and DEA guys are often dirty while they were with the CIA, while they work with DEA. And I'm not too sure about the DEA, but I know once you're in the CIA, you're pretty much in the CIA for life. You might get another job, but you're still working for the CIA. Regarding the drones, in one meeting, CS1 explained to Campo, what we would do with the drones, we put explosives and we send it over there and boom. In another conversation, CS1 asked Sensi how much C4 explosives the drone could carry, to which Sensi responded in sum and substance, approximately 6 kilograms, which is enough to blow up the whole F word. I don't want to say. As part of the scheme, Campo and Sensi agreed to launder approximately 12 million of CJNG narcotics proceeds to the CI, to the federal informant. Laundered approximately 750, so they got him laundering a little bit, 750K, which they put in cryptocurrency, and provided a payment for approximately 220 kilograms of cocaine. That's a lot of money, which would trigger the distribution of sales of the narcotics worth approximately $5 million. So they got these guys for $5 million, and I don't think they got their cocaine, for which Campo and Sensi would receive directly portions of the narcotics proceeds to the profit and receive further commission. All right. So they are both charged with conspiring to commit narcoterrorism, which carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years in prison, conspiring to distribute and possess with intent distribute cocaine, another 10 years for that, conspiring to provide materials, support, and resources to the CJNG, a foreign terrorist organization, under 20 years. So very interesting. So let's find out more about who Paul Campo and Robert Sensi is. So we're first going to look at Paul Campo. So he works for Global Financial Consultants. So he's actually the founder. So, he went into the private sector after working for the DEA. So prior to the establishment of GFC, Paul Campo had a 25-year career as special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration. He was appointed deputy chief of the Office of Financial Operations in February of 2013 under Obama. In this capacity, he oversaw $17 million of agency funding. He employed cutting-edge technologies and created and developed new bilateral law enforcement programs with the government of Mexico and Latin American countries. So he was definitely working in Mexico, where a lot of the DEA and the CIA, especially with El Chapo going on around this time. Now, he's doing this around the time that Fast and Furious was happening, around 2013, maybe a little after Fast and Furious. And it's later been revealed by several sources that the DEA was working directly with the Sinaloa cartel, which I believe the CJNG cartel broke off from. He represented the DEA before Congress, the banking industry, and money service businesses, financial crimes, Office of Foreign Asset Control, the DOJ, the Treasury, the NSC, as well as foreign, federal, state, and local law enforcement officials. He presented stuff to Interpol, the Financial Task Force, ICE, the Federal Reserve, the Canadian AML Institute, bank secrecy, all sorts of people. He provided briefings to the Attorney General, so this is a very high-ranking DEA official. Members of Congress and staffers on several DEA enforcement programs who participated in numerous executive-level briefings for high-ranking foreign officials, U.S. ambassadors, and ministry officials, blah, 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 blah. And he co-chaired the Strategic Alliance, which proceeds of Crime Working Group, which monitors current international money laundering, crime threats, and international criminality. So he knows all about this, so he's good at it. I'm guessing he didn't just start laundering money after he left the DEA. I'm guessing he's doing it before, but who knows? Prior to his assignment in the Office of Financial Operations, Mr. Campbell held several key positions within the DEA. He was acting chief of the Office of Congressional Affairs, so he's working directly with Congress. In that capacity, he was the principal advisor to then Administrator Karen Tandy. Mr. Campbell was promoted and became a member of the DEA's executive staff as an executive assistant to the Office of Chief Counsel, 2005. So under Bush, so he was a high-ranking DEA official under Bush and continued on with Obama. While on executive staff, Mr. Campbell was involved with the implementation of the agency policies and procedures that impacted the DEA's mission. From 1998 to 2003, Mr. Campbell held a variety of positions to include acting regional director for Europe and Africa regions while assigned to the DEA offices in Rome and Milan. While assigned to the embassy in Rome and then the consulate in Milan, Mr. Campbell was responsible for all enforcement actions in the region, as well as serving the consulate general's personal advisor to all issues concerning drug trafficking. So one thing I do know about the CIA is when they work overseas, they pose as someone else. There'll be an embassy attached. They might be a DEA agent. So this guy definitely seems like a DEA agent is his cover. He's really working for the CIA. That's why he's off in Europe and Africa. And even here, early on in his career, Mr. Campbell spent several years as a field agent assigned to New York's multi-agency Southeast Asian Heroin Task Force. We excelled in the disruption of violent heroin trafficking activities. In 1996, he was assigned as a backup supervisor in the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force, the agency's oldest and most successful state and local cooperative initiative. All right, he has a law degree from Syracuse, and there's a helicopter. So we're going to go on and find out who his buddy is. Who's this guy? Robert Sensi. So he's 76 years old. He's a very old gentleman to be still caught up in money laundering and narco trafficking. Not many people are reporting on him, but shout out to Jack Paulson, who actually did some reporting on Robert Mario Sensi. So who is he? As they go, so and Campbell's attempted support for the cartel, along with his quote-unquote friend, was said to include an agreement to launder $12 million, as well as advice for producing the synthetic opiate fentanyl and procuring weaponized drones. Public records further revealed that Mr. Sensi was noted to be 75 years old and from Boca Raton, Florida, is the infamous former CIA operative Robert Mario Sensi, who was born in January 22nd, 1950, and he once sued the Penguin Group for their book, America at Night by Larry J. Colbert. We're going to read some passages from that book. The news followed widespread reporting of the 29-year-old former CIA asset, so they're connecting it to another CIA guy who shot people in D.C., and then they kind of go over the indictment, and they talk about how he's sentenced to 6 months in prison for stealing $2.5 million from Kuwait Airways. And they also say the federal government has said that Sensi has a relationship with the CIA from late 1983 until the time of his arrest. According to the Post, an assistant U.S. attorney, Theodore A. Shamda, who prosecuted Sensi, said the charges against Sensi were unrelated to his CIA activities. Okay, so he's been in trouble before, and again, kind of financial crimes. Sensi's past role in the CIA has led to him being treated as a credible witness to the Ronald Reagan administration's alleged October surprise negotiation and the delay of Americans being released as hostages from Tehran until after his 1980 presidential campaign against Jimmy Carter ended. So those people who are not familiar with the October surprise, basically George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan in their campaign, and a lot of the CIA cronies of George H.W. Bush met with Iranian leadership and had them delay the release of the hostages they were holding so Carter wouldn't get a big boost and win the election. So they meddled in foreign affairs to get a boost for Ronald Reagan so he could win the 1980 election against Jimmy Carter. Some other stuff about him working in Dubai, Boca Raton. So we're going to talk more about America at Night. He was a major subject, alleged that Kolb, the son of a former CIA official, had committed a felony by publishing the short biography. All right. We're going to read his book. Mr. Sensi's claim. Okay. All right. All right. So let's look at this book that talks about Robert Sensi. An alleged plot by two rogue CIA operatives to link 2004 presidential candidate John F. Kerry to al-Qaeda brought Larry J. Kolb, then a retired intelligence officer, back into the world of intrigue. In the Kirkland Jr. common room last night, Kolb detailed the subject of his second book, America at Night, which documents the operatives' attempt to fabricate a business link between Kerry and international terror. So they're basically doing the same thing they did for the October surprise. These are CIA agents acting as political operatives for the Republican Party so that the Bush can beat his political opponent or Bush's vice president could beat his political opponent. In his book, Kolb alleges that operatives Robert M. Sensi and Richard M. Hirschfeld were both tied to former President George H.W. Bush. Sensi served in the CIA when Bush was vice president, while Hirschfeld was close to the Bush family, according to Kolb. I just couldn't see it as a coincidence that this had been organized by a pair of rogue CIA conmen who had ties to George Bush, he said. Kolb was publicly associated with the investigation, and his name was released after he helped call off a financial merger that would have framed Kerry. So these guys, so he blew the whistle on Sensi and Hirschfeld trying to frame John Kerry as being a al-Qaeda supporter. With 2 books and 2 movie deals, blah, 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 blah. So let's look at who Larry J. Kolb is, the author of this book on Robert Sensi. Larry J. Kolb is the author of 2 memoirs of his life as an intelligence officer. Prior to his book, and this is a little disappointing to me, and we'll get into this more. Kolb, by his own account, worked as a close advisor to Muhammad Ali and Adnan Khashoggi. Those of you guys who've studied Jeffrey Epstein or Donald Trump, you know Adnan Khashoggi was this big, rich Saudi arms dealer who had ties to the Iran-Contra scandal, ties to Jeffrey Epstein, and ties to Donald Trump. And I'm really disappointed that Muhammad Ali had a CIA advisor, and we'll learn a little bit later that Muhammad Ali was working with the CIA for Iran-Contra. Very disappointing. So he worked with CIA co-founder Miles Copeland Jr. and Miles Copeland is the father of, I think it's Stuart Copeland, who was a drummer in the Police. Yeah, he was the Police with Sting, the Police Sting band in the 80s. So yeah, okay. With whom he was involved in the intrigues in Pakistan, Iran, the Philippines, Nicaragua, and elsewhere until Kolb was forced to retire to a safe house in Florida to avoid extradition to India. So he was doing some dirty business in India. Talk about he was boom. All right, so that's who he is, and they say Kolb's investigation of Robert Sensi and Richard Hirschfeld led to him to foil a conspiracy to smear the John Kerry 2004 presidential campaign with false links to al-Qaeda. This became the subject of his 2007 book, America at Night. And here is his book, America at Night. And we are going to look at some passages from America at Night that show that Robert Sensi was a big-time CIA agent with ties to George H.W. Bush, William Casey, who was director of the CIA at the time. All right, so here are some passages from his book, America at Night. Early in 1985, in a secret meeting in the White House that I attended with Muhammad Ali and others, Vice President George Bush asked Muhammad to use his credibility in the Muslim world to start a covert dialogue with the Ayatollah Ayatollah Khomeini to try and procure release of the American, British, Kuwaiti, and Saudi hostages then being held in Beirut. In the course of that meeting, the vice president gave me the business card of Robert M. Sensi, chairman, the Ambassadors Club, Republicans Abroad, care of the RNC, and informed us Sensi actually worked for the CIA and would provide whatever support Muhammad Ali needed for the mission. All right. Then they say later, when we met Sensi, he told us he was being run directly by CIA Director Bill Casey in close concert with Vice President Bush. Sensi always said he worked nominally for Kuwaiti Airlines and the Kuwaiti royal family would be funding their operation. Sensi's primary mission for the CIA was engineering a covert opening to moderates within the Iranian power structure. His primary mission for the Republican Party was running an offshore financing company. Months later, he was arrested in London, extradited to the United States to stand trial on charges of embezzling from Kuwait Airways. Sensi's defense was that he worked for the CIA. The expenditures for which he was being prosecuted were part of a CIA mission knowingly paid for by the Kuwaiti royal family. During the proceedings, a CIA representative appeared and stipulated that Sensi had been affiliated with the CIA, but also that the expenditures specified in the charges were not part of any CIA operation. Sensi was convicted and sent to several prisons for just 6 months. Also in 1977, Sensi met and befriended then relatively unknown frequent flyer Yasser Arafat, PLO chairman. He arranged Arafat's first U.S. media interviews. He was fluent in Italian, French, Spanish, Belgium, Arabic, and Farsi. And because of that, he was recruited to the CIA and meets Bill Casey, and then he travels to Europe, Mideast, West Africa as his undercover of him being the Ambassadors Club for the RNC. So he's both a big-time Republican and a big-time CIA spy. The Republican National Committee opened a secret channel to Iran. So here we're talking about the October surprise. The Republican National Committee opened a secret channel to Iran in the summer of 1980, Sensi said, already downed his drink. By that night, of course, I'd already been to Beirut with him and he knew I knew his card said Republicans Abroad, but his real employer was the CIA. He also knew about my father's career and that Miles Copeland and I had been spending a great deal of time together, sitting over there at night, boom, boom, boom. Wait just a goddamn minute, Sensi said. I was following orders from the CIA with the full knowledge and approval of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States and members of the Kuwaiti royal family. I'm not going to be the fall guy. And then later, he said that he was running CIA's Iran initiative from 1982 using Kuwaiti money to establish front companies. Sensi went on about how he'd been a friend of, that's Bill Casey, the director of the CIA, who was also Ronald Reagan's campaign manager, and died in mysterious circumstances. He was heavily involved in Iran-Contra, and he died before he could testify. A lot of people think his death was a little suspicious. A whole wrecking crew of characters in the White House were also involved, including Reagan, Bush. I'm not going to be the fall guys, Sensi said again, but maybe he was, because the CIA soon sent him to London to shut up. And then later he says, Mr. Sensi received a telephone call from Vice President George Bush himself, calling Mr. Sensi to give him advice and instructions on how to conduct the dangerous but all-important mission he was about to lead us on in Beirut. It's not many CIA operatives that take their instructions directly from the Vice President of the United States. And when I remember that phone call and all the amazing contacts Mr. Sensi made for us in Beirut and Tel Aviv, it's really very funny to hear the prosecutor call Mr. Sensi nothing more than a marginal player for the CIA. And later, this gentleman says, Richard Marshall says, we work for the CIA, for an important branch of the CIA that does things so important and clandestine that not even our congressional oversight committees can be allowed to know about this. No oversight, no written budgets, and thus, accordingly, no congressional appropriations to fund our operations. So this is, real black ops, even like secreter than the CIA, like secret team, deep state, George Bush people. To you, we offer certain of our agencies clandestine resources and capabilities in exchange for money that funds our special operations. January 1985, behind closed doors in the office of the vice president. George H.W. Bush told us Sensi would provide Muhammad Ali whatever resources he would need in his attempts to negotiate with Khomeini. Sensi's cover job, Bush said, was working for an offshore arm of the Republican Party. Sensi's real job, Bush said, was working for the CIA. And then he says later, I mean, think about it, Vince. Two American white boys who suddenly had high-level contacts all over the Muslim world thanks to their close friendships with Muhammad Ali. Both of them are recruited by the CIA. Both of them ended up flying harder. So there's a couple other books that do mention Robert Sensi, some good books that I've read. This is a good book. We recommend everyone read the whole book. It's by Joe Trento. It's called Prelude to Terror. And he asks, why did this man deserve such special treatment? Because Robert Sensi arranged in 1980 for Royal Kuwaiti planes to ferry back and forth. So again, this is also a surprise, to London, Madrid, and Paris, the negotiators dealing with William Casey. So he's helping arrange William Casey to talk to Iran about delaying the release of the hostages. The Thatcher regime, already deeply beholden to the Arabs, were the hosts. A Royal Kuwaiti jet collected the negotiating party from Madrid and flew them to London. In London, Casey made it clear that the representative in all future negotiations would be Tom Carter. And this is another really good book, The CIA, Mafia, and George Bush by Pete Bruton. And he says, CIA agent Robert Sensi testified in federal court in Washington, D.C., that he worked with Clint Jr., that's Clint Murchison, someone who has been accused of being involved in the JFK assassination, to try and replace secret satellite tracking stations in Liberia. The CIA was concerned that it would lose the valuable tracking stations as a result of the military coup in 1980 by General Sen-Doe. The CIA also used okay. Then later he said, Twitten's decision that of London Station is highly suspect and negligent. As they knew, as I did, the British government was, along with the British arms industry, Tiny Roland, Ashraf Marwan, and again, Adnan Khashoggi, we talked about early, heavily involved in Iran-Contra. Obviously, Trenton knew that North, Shackley, Clines, Hakim. So these are all people heavily involved in Iran-Contra. North, Shackley, and Clines involved in a lot of the narco trafficking that was going on in Central America. Albert Hakim was involved in a lot of the arms that we sold to Iran, and Robert Sensi, as well as Cyrus Hashemi. So, okay. So you see the kind of picture story is going on. So this is not a case where they caught ex-CIA working with the drug cartels. The feds sought out this guy. We sought out Robert Sensi, and tried to entrap him into money laundering, narcoterrorism, fentanyl, all this crazy stuff. But it does show that the whole, if anyone who studies Iran-Contra, you know all these Bush-connected CIA agents are very involved in drug trafficking. There was one big case with actual shows with the Mexican cartel and kind of shows how the DEA deals with the CIA. I highly recommend a documentary on Amazon called American Narc about a DEA agent called Hector Bariles. And he actually found out that the CIA was working with the Mexican drug cartel and were even involved in the murder of a DEA agent called Kiki Camarena. If you watch Narcos Mexico, it's about the murder of Kiki Camarena, but they don't leave in the details that CIA agent and close friend of George Bush, Felix Rodriguez, was heavily involved in working with the cartels and torturing and interrogating Kiki Camarena. But hopefully you enjoyed this little show. A little longer than I thought it would be, but I think it provides some historical context. I think what's happening right now is there is a divide in the CIA and the deep state. And so we have DEA coming after former CIA agents allied with George Bush. We have some of the CIA allied to the old Bush people. Now there are new intelligence CIA people allied to Trump. I think this might be a move by the Trump administration to root out some of George Bush's old cronies who are also political operatives who might be able to plant a scandal on him in the next election or paint a scandal on the MAGA community. But if you made it this far, please like, subscribe, and share all my videos. Watch all my other videos, man. I have a lot of really interesting videos that deal with the CIA, that deal with politics, that deal with conspiracies, and check it out on my Casey Gain YouTube channel. Peace.